The elevator doors slide shut with a soft chime, sealing Maxwell Hart inside the polished steel chamber of his own Manhattan skyscraper. The 62-year-old real estate tycoon adjusts his Armani tie and checks his Rolex. Another board meeting conquered, another $1 million deal secured. 20 floors down to the parking garage, then off to his penthouse to celebrate another victory in his empire of glass and steel. But what happened next shocked everyone in the Hart International building that Tuesday afternoon. The elevator lurches. Not the gentle deceleration he expects, but a violent jolt that sends Maxwell stumbling against the mirrored wall. The digital display flickers, 18, 17, 16, but the numbers are dropping too fast, much too fast. The elegant chamber that moments ago felt like a throne room now transforms into a metal coffin plummeting toward Earth. What the hell? Maxwell's words are cut short as the elevator shudders and drops again, this time in complete freefall. The lights flicker and dim. 20 floors of nothing but air and gravity separate him from certain death. 3 floors below in the employee break room, Martha Jenkins pauses while wiping down the coffee station. Something's wrong. After 15 years of cleaning these halls, mopping these floors, and watching the Hart family's every move from the shadows, she knows the building sounds like a mother knows her child's cry. The mechanical hum has changed, there's a grinding, a screaming of metal that shouldn't be there. Her weathered hands grip the cleaning cart as the emergency lights begin flashing throughout the building. Then she hears it, the desperate voice crackling through the building's intercom system. Emergency. Elevator malfunction in the executive shaft. Mr. Hart is trapped inside a falling elevator. Martha's heart stops. She knows that voice, it's David, the head of security, and she's never heard such panic in his usually steady tone. Around her, employees begin rushing toward the stairwells, but Martha stands frozen, her mind racing back to a moment from 3 years ago. Little did anyone know that Martha had been in Mr. Hart's office that day, dusting behind his massive mahogany desk when his private phone rang. She'd started to leave, but his sharp gesture told her to stay and continue working. She was invisible to him, after all, just another piece of furniture in his carefully orchestrated world. The emergency override code is 7-4-9-2-6-3, Maxwell had said into the phone, his voice tight with frustration. Yes, I changed it from the building standard. I don't trust anyone with my private elevator access. Martha had continued dusting, her movements automatic, but every number burned into her memory. Years of being dismissed, overlooked, and treated as if she didn't exist had taught her one valuable skill: she noticed everything. Now, as chaos erupts around her and Maxwell Hart plunges toward his death, Martha Jenkins drops her cleaning supplies and runs. Her worn sneakers pound against the marble floors as she races toward the elevator control room. Past the panicking executives, past the security guards shouting into their radios, past David who's frantically calling the fire department while tears stream down his face. The elevator's not responding to any commands. David shouts into his radio. It's in total freefall. We've got maybe 90 seconds before impact. Martha reaches the restricted control room, her hands shaking as she approaches the master control panel. The security keypad blinks red, waiting for the emergency override code that could stop the elevator's descent and save Maxwell Hart's life. But the real shock was still coming. As Martha stares at the keypad, her finger hovering over the numbers she memorized years ago, a terrible thought strikes her. What if the code has been changed? What if her years of invisible service, of being the woman who knew every secret in this building, amounts to nothing when it truly matters? The building's emergency alarm pierces the air, counting down the seconds until impact. Somewhere above her, Maxwell Hart is falling through darkness, probably thinking about all the people he's dismissed, all the chances he's wasted, all the lives he's touched without ever really seeing them. This decision would change everything between them forever. Martha takes a deep breath, closes her eyes, and begins to punch in the sequence. 7, 4, 9, 2, 6. But as her finger hovers over the final number, the lights in the control room suddenly flicker and die, plunging her into complete darkness just as the elevator's emergency beacon begins its final, desperate signal for help. The elevator cables screech overhead as Martha's trembling finger hovers over the emergency control panel. The frantic voices from the building's security team still crackle through her earpiece, but their words blur into background noise. All she can hear is her own heartbeat thundering against her ribs. "Come on, Martha," she whispers to herself, the same way she used to encourage her daughter Keisha through her homework. "You got this." But does she? For 15 years, she's been invisible in this gleaming tower of glass and steel. Just Maxwell Hart's maid, the woman who dusts his awards, empties his trash, and pretends not to hear his phone conversations. The woman he barely acknowledges when she brings his morning coffee. Her mind races back to that humid Tuesday morning 3 months into her employment. She was cleaning Mr. Hart's office when his phone rang, and he'd answered it with unusual tension in his voice. "The emergency override is July 15th, 92, he'd said quietly. "Only use it if everything falls apart." Martha had been wiping down his bookshelf, invisible as always, but those numbers had stuck in her mind like a song lyric. July 15th, 1992, the same date her daughter was born. Now, standing before the control panel with Maxwell Hart's life hanging in the balance, those numbers feel like divine intervention. She punches them in, 0-7-1-5-9-2. The panel flashes red. "Access denied." "No, no, no," Martha mutters, her Georgia accent thickening with panic. The elevator display shows Hart plummeting past the 10th floor. In the distance, she can hear sirens wailing, but they won't get here in time. Her hands shake as she tries again, slower this time. Maybe she misremembered. Maybe it was July 16th, 92. The panel flashes red again. That's when another memory surfaces, sharp and clear as yesterday. It was Hart's birthday party last year, one of those fancy affairs where Martha worked as invisible help, serving champagne to people who looked through her like she was made of air. She'd been in Hart's private study, collecting empty glasses, when she overheard him arguing with someone on the phone. "The building codes are ironclad," Hart had said, his voice tight with frustration. "Even my own father's tricks won't work anymore. Everything's digital now, everything's changed." His father's tricks. Martha's pulse quickens as she remembers the portrait hanging in Hart's office, old Theodore Hart, the man who built this empire from nothing. The brass nameplate beneath it read, "Theodore Maxwell Hart, 1937 to 2003. But what if those numbers weren't a date at all? What if they were something else entirely? Martha's fingers fly across the keypad, inputting the sequence that's been haunting her, 1-9-3-7. Theodore Hart's birth year. The panel glows green for a split second before switching to amber. Secondary verification required. What does that even mean? Martha shouts at the machine, frustration boiling over. Through the security monitor, she can see Hart slumped against the elevator wall, barely conscious. That's when she spots Jason Crane striding through the lobby, his expensive suit and predatory smile unmistakable even on the grainy security feed. Hart's biggest business rival, showing up at the worst possible moment. The man who's been circling Hart Industries like a vulture for months, waiting for any sign of weakness. "You son of a..." Martha cuts herself off, her grandmother's voice echoing in her memory about ladies not cursing. But as she watches Crane smooth his tie and check his watch with obvious satisfaction, a cold realization washes over her. This isn't coincidence. This is opportunity, maybe even orchestrated opportunity. The secondary verification screen blinks, waiting for additional input. Martha stares at it, her mind racing through every conversation she's overheard, every seemingly insignificant detail she's absorbed during her years of being treated like furniture. Then she remembers the night she worked late, organizing Hart's files. She'd found an old business card tucked inside a folder marked personal. The card was for a security company, and written on the back in Hart's handwriting were the words, "When all else fails, remember what matters most." What matters most to Maxwell Hart? His empire. His legacy. His Martha's breath catches. Of course. The answer isn't in his business files or his father's history. It's in the one thing Hart values above everything else, his company's stock price. She inputs the current trading value of Hart Industries stock, $28.47. The amber light turns green, and somewhere deep in the building's mechanical heart, she hears the blessed sound of emergency brakes engaging. But her relief is short-lived. The building's fire alarms suddenly blare to life, red warning lights flashing throughout the lobby. On the security monitor, she watches Jason Crane's satisfied smile falter as emergency personnel flood the building. Martha's hands tremble as she realizes the terrifying truth: this elevator malfunction wasn't an accident, and saving Maxwell Hart might have just triggered something far more dangerous than anyone imagined. The elevator control panel's red warning lights cast an ominous glow across Martha's weathered hands as she stands frozen, her mind racing through fragments of overheard conversations and glimpsed passwords. 20 floors down, Maxwell Hart's fate hangs in the balance, and the weight of that responsibility crushes down on her shoulders like a physical force. "Think, Martha, think," she whispers to herself, her Georgia accent thick with desperation. Her fingers hover over the keypad, trembling slightly as she recalls watching Maxwell input various codes over the years. But which one? The building's emergency override system demands precision. One wrong entry could lock her out permanently. Meanwhile, across the city, Jason Crane's black limousine pulls up to Hart Industries' main entrance. The 40-something corporate shark steps out, his steel gray eyes gleaming with opportunity. He's been circling Maxwell's empire like a vulture for months, waiting for exactly this kind of moment. "Is it true?" Crane asks his assistant as they stride through the marble lobby. "Hart's actually trapped in there?" 20 floors down, sir. Emergency crews are on their way, but... His assistant's voice trails off meaningfully. Crane's lips curve into a predatory smile. He's spent years in boardroom battles with Maxwell, watching the arrogant tycoon dismiss everyone around him, especially the help. How fitting that Maxwell's downfall might come from the one person he's spent decades ignoring. Back at the elevator shaft, Martha closes her eyes and lets her memory drift to a winter morning 3 years ago. She'd been dusting Maxwell's office when he'd received a particularly heated phone call about overseas accounts. She remembers the tension in his voice, the way he'd paced behind his mahogany desk, and most importantly, the sequence of numbers he'd muttered under his breath while staring out at the New York skyline. Hotel 7749, she breathes, the code crystallizing in her mind like a half-remembered dream. It had seemed odd at the time. Why repeat random numbers during a phone call about mergers and acquisitions? Her fingers fly across the keypad, inputting the sequence with newfound confidence. The panel flickers, cycling through various diagnostic screens before displaying a hopeful green light. Martha's heart soars for exactly 3 seconds before the system emits a harsh electronic beep and the display flashes. "Code rejected, security protocol updated." No, no, no! Martha pounds her fist against the control panel, frustration and fear boiling over. Of course Maxwell would have changed the codes. The man updates his security systems like other people change their socks. But then something else clicks into place, another memory from just last month. She'd been delivering coffee to Maxwell's office when she'd overheard him arguing with someone about legacy protocols and grandfather clauses. He'd mentioned something about keeping old systems active for historical access. What if the building maintains multiple override systems? What if there's an older code that still works? Martha's mind races back further, to her very first week working for Maxwell Hart 15 years ago. She'd been so nervous, so eager to prove herself worthy of the position. She remembers cleaning his private elevator after hours, finding a small business card wedged behind the control panel with numbers scrawled on it in Maxwell's distinctive handwriting. But here's what weighs heaviest on her heart as she stands in this moment of crisis: she might be the only person in this entire gleaming tower who genuinely cares whether Maxwell Hart lives or dies today. His employees fear him, his rivals want to destroy him, his social circle tolerates him for his wealth. But Martha has watched him for 15 years, seen his moments of unexpected kindness buried beneath layers of corporate armor, witnessed the loneliness that money can never cure. She thinks about her own grandson back in Atlanta, how she works double shifts to pay for his college tuition, how Maxwell, despite his dismissive manner, has never once docked her pay when she needed time off for family emergencies. There's more to the man than his reputation suggests. Jason Crane's voice echoes from the lobby below as he coordinates with building security, his corporate takeover plans already in motion. But Martha Jenkins has something Crane doesn't: insider knowledge earned through years of being invisible, of being present in moments when powerful men thought no one was watching or listening. Her fingers find the keypad once more, this time inputting a sequence that's haunted her memory for over a decade, the numbers from that faded business card, the ones that might represent Maxwell's deepest secret or his ultimate salvation. The panel flickers ominously, processing her input as the seconds tick by with agonizing slowness. But just as hope begins to bloom in Martha's chest, the building's lights flicker, and she realizes with growing horror that someone else has been manipulating the system all along, and they're not finished with Maxwell Hart yet. Martha's hands tremble as she stares at the elevator control panel, the weight of Maxwell's life crushing down on her shoulders like a physical force. The emergency lights cast eerie shadows across her face as she realizes the horrifying truth: someone has deliberately tampered with the building's entire safety system. "This ain't no accident," she whispers, her Georgia accent thickening under stress. The display shows Maxwell's elevators suspended precariously between floors 15 and 14, and every second counts. Behind her, the building's security team scrambles in panic, but Martha knows something they don't. During those long nights cleaning Maxwell's office, she'd watched her nephew Jeremy teach her basic computer skills over video calls. "Auntie Martha," he'd always say, "technology ain't scary when you understand it's just following patterns." Now, those late-night lessons might be the difference between life and death. Martha's fingers hover over the emergency override keyboard. What she's about to attempt could land her in federal prison. Hacking into a commercial building's safety system is a felony. But as she thinks about Maxwell trapped in that metal coffin, his arrogance and dismissive comments from years past suddenly seem irrelevant. "Lord, forgive me for what I'm about to do," she mutters, then begins typing with surprising speed and precision. Meanwhile, 20 floors above, Jason Crane paces his temporary command center like a predator sensing blood. His phone buzzes constantly with calls from investors, all eager to capitalize on Hart Industries' impending collapse. The irony isn't lost on him: he'd planned Maxwell's corporate downfall for months, but this elevator crisis offers an opportunity beyond his wildest dreams. "Sir," his assistant interrupts, "the building's emergency systems are showing unauthorized access attempts." Crane's eyes narrow. "From where?" Martha's fingers fly across the keyboard, her nephew's voice echoing in her memory. "Every system has a back door, Auntie. You just gotta know where to look." She's managed to reset the primary circuits, and for a moment, hope flickers as the elevator's emergency brake engages. The building shudders as the car stops its deadly descent. "I did it," Martha breathes, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I actually did it." But her celebration is short-lived. Warning sirens suddenly pierce the air as red lights flash throughout the building. The computer screen in front of her explodes with error messages she doesn't understand, and the temperature readings from the elevator shaft begin climbing rapidly. "What's happening?" shouts the head of security, rushing to Martha's side. That's when Martha sees it, buried in the system diagnostics, a timer counting down. Someone had planted a secondary protocol, designed to activate if anyone attempted to override the original sabotage. The elevator shaft's heating system is now running at maximum capacity, turning Maxwell's temporary prison into a furnace. "Oh no, oh no, oh no," Martha chants, her hands shaking as she scrolls through screens of code. The timer shows 8 minutes and 37 seconds remaining. Her phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number: "Stop interfering, or watch him burn." Martha's blood runs cold as she realizes the truth: this isn't just about corporate rivalry or business deals gone wrong. Someone wants Maxwell dead, and they're willing to commit murder to make it happen. Every move she makes is being monitored, every attempt to save him anticipated. She looks at the security team surrounding her, suddenly paranoid about who she can trust. The person orchestrating this nightmare isn't some external threat, they're right here in the building, watching everything unfold. As alarms continue blaring and the temperature readings climb higher, Martha faces an impossible choice. She can follow the anonymous threat and step away, potentially saving herself from whatever consequences await. Or she can dig deeper into this web of deception, knowing that one wrong move could seal Maxwell's fate forever. The timer continues its relentless countdown as Martha realizes there's a hidden layer to this conspiracy that goes deeper than she ever imagined, and she may have just painted a target on her own back. Martha's hands tremble as she stares at the emergency control panel, the weight of Maxwell's life and her own moral compass pressing down on her shoulders. The power surge has reset everything, and she has exactly 30 seconds before the backup systems engage and lock her out permanently. "Think, Martha, think," she whispers to herself, recalling the fragments of conversations she'd overheard over the years. Then it hits her, not just one code, but a sequence Maxwell used during his most private moments. She'd seen him enter it that night 3 years ago when he thought everyone had gone home, the same night she'd accidentally witnessed him crying over his late wife's photograph. Her fingers fly across the keypad, 11281987. The date of his wedding anniversary followed by his wife's birth year. The system responds immediately, hydraulic brakes engaging with a powerful hiss that echoes through the elevator shaft. The plummeting death trap slows, then stops completely at the 5th floor. Emergency crews flood the hallway as the elevator doors finally open. Maxwell stumbles out, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled and torn. But it's his eyes that have changed completely, gone is the cold arrogance, replaced by something Martha has never seen before, genuine gratitude mixed with profound shock. "Martha," he breathes, steadying himself against the wall. How did you know?" She doesn't answer immediately because she's watching his face process something deeper. For the first time in 15 years of employment, Maxwell Hart is truly seeing her, not as furniture or background noise, but as a human being who chose to risk everything to save his life. "Because I pay attention, Mr. Hart," she says quietly. "Because someone had to." The revelation hits him like a physical blow. All those years of dismissing her presence, treating her as invisible while conducting his most private business, never realizing she was absorbing every detail with the sharp intelligence he'd been too arrogant to notice. Building security rushes toward them with tablets and reports. "Sir, we've discovered something." The elevator's emergency systems were tampered with remotely. Someone gained access to the building's mainframe and deliberately disabled the safety protocols. Maxwell's face hardens as Martha steps forward. "It was Jason Crane," she says with quiet certainty. "I saw him here last Tuesday night when you were in London. He had a laptop, and he was in the mechanical room for over an hour." "How do you?" Maxwell starts, then stops himself. Of course she knew. Martha knew everything that happened in this building because she cared enough to notice what others ignored. The police arrive within minutes, and Martha's testimony proves crucial. Security footage confirms Crane's unauthorized access, and digital forensics reveal his cyber attack on the building's systems. What was meant to look like a tragic accident was actually attempted murder disguised as corporate sabotage. As the chaos of investigation swirls around them, Maxwell pulls Martha aside. The man who stands before her now is fundamentally different from the one who'd stepped into that elevator hours earlier. "Martha, I owe you more than my life," he says, his voice cracking with emotion. "I owe you an apology for 15 years of blindness. You've been protecting this company, protecting me, and I never even saw you." She studies his face, searching for the familiar dismissiveness, but finds only raw honesty. "People see what they choose to see, Mr. Hart. The question is what you're going to choose from now on." Over the following weeks, the transformation is remarkable. Maxwell doesn't just promote Martha, he makes her head of security and operations, recognizing that her attention to detail and genuine care for people make her invaluable in ways that go far beyond her previous role. She implements new safety protocols and creates a staff reporting system that prevents future sabotage attempts. But the deepest change is in their relationship. The invisible wall between them has crumbled completely. Maxwell finds himself seeking her counsel on major decisions, valuing her perspective on everything from personnel choices to business ethics. Martha, initially suspicious of the change, gradually accepts that his gratitude is genuine and lasting. 6 months later, at the company's annual meeting, Maxwell does something unprecedented. He publicly credits Martha with saving not just his life, but the entire company. Sometimes, he tells the assembled board and employees, the people we overlook the most are the ones who see us most clearly. Martha Jenkins reminded me that true strength isn't about power or wealth, it's about having the courage to act when it matters most, regardless of the consequences. The lesson extends far beyond their story. In a world where we often judge worth by titles and bank accounts, Martha's heroism reminds us that wisdom and courage exist in unexpected places. The person serving your coffee, cleaning your office, or caring for your children might possess insights that could change everything, if only we're humble enough to notice. As Martha later tells her daughter, respect isn't something you demand, honey. It's something you earn by seeing the value in everyone around you, especially those society tells you to ignore. The elevator still bears a small plaque commemorating that day, in recognition of courage under pressure and the power of paying attention. But the real memorial is the lasting change in how Maxwell Hart treats every person in his employ, and how Martha Jenkins learned that her voice, when raised at the right moment, could literally save lives. What hidden strengths are you overlooking in the people around you? Who in your life deserves recognition for the quiet heroism they perform every day? Share your story in the comments below, and remember, sometimes the most extraordinary courage comes from the most ordinary places.